In this video, we are continuing our discussion of corporate strategy. So last week, we introduced the two core questions of corporate strategy: which markets should you compete in, and how you organize your business to best compete. We looked at Porter's 3 tests of corporate diversification. We looked at the resource-based view of corporate diversification and organizational design. That was the Cullis and Montgomery article. We also looked at a special case of vertical integration and some of the economic underpinnings of why businesses might move forward integration or backward integration in that value chain using the Coase theorem. So we're going to kind of build on that this week, and we're going to focus more on how do you actually execute corporate strategy? How do you actually execute diversification? You've decided you need to move into a new industry, develop new competencies or capabilities. How do you actually go about doing that? There's no one right answer. There are many ways to acquire or develop new capabilities or resources. You can do it through arm's length transactions, which is just open market transactions, purchase a good or service. There are progressively deeper forms of integration, short-term contracts, licensing or franchising arrangements, joint ventures, or taking an equity stake in a company, or taking a capability in-house, either by developing it organically or by acquiring a company that already does or already plays in an industry that you're interested in or has the capabilities and resources in that industry. So these options that are in the middle are typically referred to as strategic alliances. We're going to take a look at strategic alliances versus mergers and acquisitions, but we're going to start by looking at M&A, which again is the deepest form of integration available, right? So a merger is a friendly combination of two companies. An acquisition can be friendly or hostile, and it's usually the purchase of one company by another. These terms are often used interchangeably. Acquisition is oftentimes used for like a large-small combination, where a merger is when two equal-sized or similar-sized companies combine. And oftentimes a merger refers to two companies that horizontal integration, do something similar or already in the same industry. But either term, you understand that it's acquiring a competitor or another player that already has the competencies that you wish to acquire. So empirical studies of mergers show that on average, they destroy value for shareholders. So why is that? A number of reasons that we don't necessarily need to get into, but it's very difficult to integrate two different companies. And it's also very easy to overpay for an acquisition. That being said, you continue to see mergers happen because they are a relatively quick way to acquire resources or competencies. Sometimes they help limit competition in a horizontal integration. When you're purchasing a direct competitor, it might reduce competitive pressure as well. So even though on average, mergers don't oftentimes deliver the synergies they promise, it still is a frequently used tool of corporate strategy. You can definitely apply Porter's 3 tests of diversification here to think about whether a merger in particular makes sense. It makes the cost of entry test pretty straightforward because usually you have a dollar value that you will need to pay, so you know the cost very explicitly in a merger. Strategic alliances, on the other hand, and again, those can be equity or non-equity alliances. An equity alliance would be something where you purchase a minority stake of a company or you form a joint venture. Non-equity might be having a long-term contractual relationship, franchising, licensing. These are voluntary arrangements that can take a number of different forms. The key benefit to strategic alliances is that they are much easily reversed, much more easily reversed than an acquisition or a merger. So some common reasons why you see companies enter a strategic alliance might be to enter a new market. It's common to see alliances form when companies expand overseas. So one partner might have the technical capabilities or have a product or service they want to deliver. The other one has the local knowledge of how to enter that market. Equity alliances are also a common way to hedge against uncertainty. You see companies, I give the example of Roche and Genentech. Large pharmaceuticals often have side bets on smaller, more innovative biotech companies by taking small equity stakes. Coke, for also an example that might be a little more accessible, Coke owned a large equity but minority equity stake in Monster energy drinks when they saw energy drinks becoming an attractive market. And by taking a minority stake, they didn't risk all the challenges of integrating the company and agreeing upon a price that might come up in a merger or an acquisition, but were still able to place a bet on the growing energy drink market. So strategic alliances are becoming more common in part because, as the Economist article I had you read for class talks about it, the boundaries of the firm are becoming a little more fluid. A lot of things that used to be done in-house are now out-of-house or contractual relationships, and a lot of highly innovative companies rely on these kinds of equity or non-equity alliances to continue to innovate, in part because big mature companies sometimes structurally aren't set up to foster risk-taking or innovation in the same way that smaller companies might be. So strategic alliances oftentimes can pair one partner with commercialization capabilities and a lot of in-house resources with another partner that's set up to take risks, break things, and move fast. So there are definitely some advantages to strategic alliances, but they also take time and resources to govern because it's not as clear there's not a one-size-fits-all structure here, how these partners work together. There still needs to be coordination. Finally, we can look at organic growth as kind of a hedge to either of those. If a company wants to develop a new capability or new resources, they can certainly buy tangible resources, hire people, build out a team internally. And in some ways, this saves a lot of the issues that an acquisition might pose in terms of integrating two companies that could be completely different. But on the other hand, building out the capability can be a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. And it can oftentimes end up being almost as expensive as an acquisition when you think about the scope of talent and resources that need to be acquired bit by bit. So this framework is called the Build, Borrow, Buy framework. Build means organic growth. Borrow means some form of temporary alliance, a strategic alliance. Buy means that merger or acquisition. And it's a way to think about, given the particular circumstances of what capability or resources you're attempting to build, which of these tools of corporate combination really make the most sense in your particular case. So basically, you're going to look at the relevancy, tradability, closeness, and integration that's required to successfully execute or develop a competency. There's another video I've assigned that is specifically on the Build, Borrow, Buy framework, so you'll get more on that there.